And I also only have 5 minutes.
And that was Oregon Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley questioning J.P. Morgan Chase's Jamie Dimon and Matt Taibbi, the significance of this exchange.
Well, I think that's one of the things that's really interesting, and one of the things that I write about in this article is that this is what Neil Borowski, the bailout inspector, calls the original sin of the bailout, which is this moment in time where right after TARP was passed, where the government elected to call companies that were unhealthy and insolvent healthy and solvent. When they scrapped the plan to buy up troubled assets, remember the TARP was the Troubled Asset Relief Program, well, they scrapped that idea a few days after the bill was passed and decided to just dump a whole bunch of money onto the balance sheets of these banks. This was called the Capital Purchase Program. They spent $125 billion right off the bat. It was spent on 9 companies. And one of the things they said was all of these companies are healthy and viable. And it turned out later, according to numerous sources, including all the SIGTARP reports, including according to Borowski and other sources, that they didn't even check to see if these companies were solvent at the time. They had no interest in discovering that one way or the other. And in fact, many of these companies were on the brink of failure at the time. Borowski was told specifically that Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs were both on the brink of disaster when they were given this money. It's interesting that Jamie Dimon talks about how his company didn't need that Fed money. It came out in the Bloomberg's Freedom of Information request when they got all the data from the audit of the Federal Reserve. It came out that his company at that time, in late 2008, had a $50 or $60 billion line of credit with the Fed on top of all the money they were getting through the TARP bailout, through the bailout of Bear Stearns and other facilities. So apparently they didn't need all that money, that $100 billion or whatever it was they got from the federal government. It was just they were taking it because they were being polite, and they were asked to by the federal government. And this fiction that they didn't need the money, that they were healthy all the time, the government, we not only gave them money, but we vouched for them, and now we're stuck vouching for them basically forever, and that's the ongoing bailout that has become the real problem.
I wanted to ask William Black, in the deal that the Obama administration reached on taxes recently with the House Republicans, there hasn't been a lot of attention to the issue of what happened to carried interest. The hedge fund moguls of the world were most concerned about that, their ability to evade taxes by having their payments as capital gains instead of actual fees and salaries. Could you talk about what the Obama administration did there?
Yeah, let me mention just one thing, though, that fits to Matt's point. They also changed the accounting rules so the banks didn't have to recognize their losses so that they could hide them and pretend to be healthy. So that's a huge part of that story. As to taxes, this was, again, a classic example of the Obama administration snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, where it had all the leverage and negotiated against itself once again. And so, yes, the wealthiest folks, and this is the irony, of course, is we're talking about the George Romneys of the world. I'm sorry, the Mitt Romneys of the world. I grew up in Michigan. I'm dating myself. Are the principal beneficiary through something that is completely unsupportable and on any policy ground, which is this carried interest, which simply treats income as if it weren't income anymore for the wealthiest Americans who receive their money from running hedge funds. And that's continued.
Let's end with the legacy of the outgoing Treasury Secretary, Timothy Geithner. On Thursday, President Obama praised his time in office.
Thanks in large part to his steady hand. Our economy has been growing again for the past 3 years. Our businesses have created nearly 6 million new jobs. The money that we spent to save the financial system has largely been paid back. We've put in place rules to prevent that kind of financial meltdown from ever happening again. An auto industry was saved. We made sure taxpayers are not on the hook if the biggest firms fail again. We've taken steps to help underwater homeowners come up for air. and open new markets to sell American goods overseas. And we've begun to reduce our deficit through a balanced mix of spending cuts and reforms to a tax code that, at the time that we both came in, was too skewed in favor of the wealthy at the expense of middle-class Americans. So when the history books are written, Tim Geithner is going to go down as one of our finest secretaries of the Treasury.
That was President Obama. Professor Black, final seconds.
Okay, first, Geithner is a principal person who caused the crisis. He was supposed to be the top regulator preventing it in New York and did nothing. Second, he has created crony capitalism, American style. Third, those regulations, in fact, will not prevent future crises and were designed to make sure they were not. And I agree strongly with Matt that the choice of Jack Lew is to not only produce continuity with Geithner's disastrous failed policies, but to signal the administration's desire to continue the bailout of Wall Street.
Yeah, I think the legacy of Tim Geithner is simple. He's the architect of too big to fail, and that's going to be historically his legacy. When this all blows up, and it's going to blow up for sure, because things can't continue the way that they are right now. People are going to look back in history and they're going to say, who was to blame for this? And Timothy Geithner is going to be the guy who designed this entire system.
Of course, and he'll always be remembered as the first Treasury Secretary who neglected to pay his own taxes.
right. There's that truth. Yeah, exactly.
We want to thank you both for being with us. Matt Taibbi, contributing editor at Rolling Stone, his latest piece, Secrets and Lies of the Bailout. We'll link to it at democracynow.org. And William Black, professor at University of Missouri, Kansas City. This is Democracy Now! Thanks so much for watching this report from Democracy Now!, your daily independent global news hour. We don't accept advertising or corporate funding, but rather rely on donations from viewers like you. Please make your contribution by visiting democracynow.org. We need your support today to keep bringing you this hard-hitting, in-depth reporting.